My name is Phil Kelly. I'm a bladder cancer patient. I was diagnosed nearly 11 years ago. And after I completed my active treatment, I became involved in trying to do work that would be based on my own experience of treatment for bladder cancer that could be of benefit to others. A lot of the treatment and care that I received was excellent, was first class, and I very much appreciate it. But there were definitely lessons that I thought could be learned. And so since my treatment was completed, I've set about doing a number of things and contributing to work on a voluntary basis that hopefully has eased the path for those that follow me. I've become involved quite closely with one of the two small bladder cancer specific charities in the UK, Action Bladder Cancer UK, initially as a trustee and more recently as a patient advisor. And I've been involved in a lot of one-to-one support of individual bladder cancer patients in different situations and at different stages of their treatment. The first and most important consideration in establishing a decentralized clinical trial would be to actually talk to the types of patients that you're aspiring to engage in the trial and to ask them what it would be that would make their participation attractive and how the trial can be designed to ease the burden for them and to make it as convenient and as easily to be part of as possible. And I think there needs to be scope for individualization, depending where the patient lives, whether they're working, whether they're retired, their requirements and their personal situations can be very disparate. So times of day could be a factor if somebody's in employment. It might be that if somebody lives at a great distance from the trial centre, that making as much of the trial deliverable locally is the most important thing for them. It might be that you have to consider arranging transport for them. Transport can be a big issue. It could be that financial support is something that's important for them. From my point of view, I think the trial needs to be designed around the patient, to be patient-friendly, patient-centered, and with scope for individualized packages of support to enable each patient to participate. The basis of decentralized trials ought to be maximizing the benefits for patients and reducing the burden for patients. So convenience is definitely an aspect of that. And that's a very strong reason why decentralized clinical trials have got a potential to help in terms of these particularly vulnerable patients. Anything that can reduce the burden for patients and maximize the benefit, and also reduce duplication of effort. So one of the things that I've thought about is obviously that wherever it's possible and wherever it can be achieved, to deliver clinical trials locally to the patient is obviously something to aim for. And also to try and piggyback existing patient appointment commitments and test and treatment commitments so that the trial can take advantage of when patients are at hospital without requiring them to make additional trips. I've got experience of one particular clinical trial that was decentralized. There were a number of centers that were attempting to recruit patients into the trial. And it transpired that one or two of those centers were much more successful in recruitment than the others. And I'm fairly convinced that that was down to the relationship that was established between the people in those trusts and hospitals who were making that first engagement with the patients. And perhaps in the other hospitals, they didn't manage to establish that relationship of trust. My suggestion is that wherever possible, the lead person clinically who's got the greatest commitment to the trial ought to be the person that makes that first engagement with each patient that's going to be recruited, even if that has to be virtual. Thereafter, I think there needs to be regular and ongoing communication between the trial and the patients involved. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the clinical lead. That could be, it's not quite an administrative role, but it could be a specific communication lead person who makes sure that the links between patients and the trial are maintained, between tests or inputs, to check on the progress of the trial for each individual, and also to ensure that there aren't any particular problems that the patient is experiencing that could be a barrier to their involvement in the trial. And that role should continue throughout, and both in the active periods of the trial and possibly thereafter, because certainly one of the things that patients talk about as a barrier to engagement in trials is when they've provided involvement in giving their views and opinions and being involved in trials, they haven't had feedback as to the outcome, what the benefit turns out to be. So I think that communication lead could have a role in following up with everybody that was involved in the trial subsequently to make sure that they've got a sense of value from their participation.